You gotta just chill out, man.
Pittsburgh Steeler fans, welcome back to another episode of the Scho Bro Show. This is Steel Curtain Network editor Dave Schofield coming at you. It's Tuesday night. It's a little bit later than 9 than we'd like to, but as a Steelers fan, where else would you rather be? And with me as always, except when he's not, is my big brother, Rich. Rich, how goes it?
What you gonna do, brother, when the Scho Bros run wild on you?
I'm sorry. I started the show laughing because I started to say Pittsburgh Steelers and realized I hadn't actually brought myself up into the podcast. That was one. And
by the
two,
way, I saw that. I noticed that you did that. I wasn't going to say anything, but since you outed yourself.
I actually started a little bit early. I just got things in my mind mixed up in my order of operations. But for those of you like, hey, there they go, starting late. I wonder who's running behind. Neither of us. We were just catching up. we were just talking family stuff. I call them the boys, but I'm wearing my hashtag Pay Kyle shirt. But Kyle is traveling with the baseball team, so I was getting an update with how they're doing and everything because they're out on spring break. And it's spring.
Just Kyle, our nephew Warren too,
and Warren too. Yep,
and our brother-in-law Jamie, went down to watch the boys play.
Yep. So they're down in the Steelers stronghold of Myrtle Beach, where I was a couple weeks ago. But I tell you, spring is here. I'm ready to get going, and it's funny because every once in a while you get to that point in life, and you're like, "Oh, the weather's getting really nice." You know what? You know what I did tonight for the first time in a while that I've been able to do? Took a walk through the neighborhood in the evening. You know, getting out, getting some exercise. Oh, it feels great. And then something else happens, and you're just like, "Man, can the fall get here fast enough?" I mean, even with me, I'm like, Can Christmas time get here fast enough again? I don't want to wish it all away. Jeff Hartman's talked about that before. Don't wish away everything to get there. But I'm not ready to wish away everything with the Steelers because we still got answers, questions that we need answered, I guess is the best way to say it. So tonight we're going to talk quarterback, but guess what? A lot of people are talking quarterback. That's the big thing, conversation. We're not talking quarterback in the way you think that we are. When the title of the show was the good and bad of how the Steelers have handled the quarterback position, there could be more to that we could have added to make it a longer title. Since the retirement of Ben Roethlisberger is kind of where we're looking at. And even before that, like after the 2016 season when he first mentioned, I've got to seriously think about if I'm going to come back. In other words, ever since the realization of that your franchise quarterback only had a certain shelf life left, there's been a lot of things that the Steelers have had to do with the quarterback position. You know, there has been some good, and trust me, I'll get in that. And then there's been a whole lot of not good, but that's going to be our discussion. But before we do, Rich, since we last met, I mean, my goodness, I was like, we better know some of these answers last week, and there's still answers that we don't know this week. But the Steelers are continuing to add some players here and there. And some things that have happened since we last talked. I can't even remember what the cutoff point was because it all runs together. Anything in particular, because I know you busted out. If you didn't check it out at Steel Curtain Network yesterday, we had, after an absence from the Steelers season being over, we had the return of Worthless 2 cents because you really had something to get out there because of free agency. Anything you would like to say about that?
What about the article or just kind of related to the article?
Both. You know,
okay.
I'm sure what's been going on with the Steelers inspired the article. So, yeah. So it's just that's why it's kind of both.
I'm not going to too much because I'm actually going to save some of it because it fits into our topic for the evening. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to kind of wait and let that evolve as we get into our topic. I will say this. The biggest thing you can take it overall from that article that I was talking about was at this point, when the Steelers didn't figure out what was going on and still haven't figured out what's going on quarterback, that makes you have to hold up on spending money. So the Steelers, they can go get pay, I won't even say big money. They didn't even pay medium money to go get a defensive lineman or anybody else or anything like that, okay? At this point, then, I start to say, don't worry about spending the money.
Mm-hmm.
I think I even responded, I don't even remember if it's on my article or somebody else's article, to somebody talking about this stuff. I was, at this point in time, the Steelers, they were like, oh, they shouldn't even spend the money. They should just roll it to next year. No, you know what I'd be doing now? And I expect to see that's what Omar Khan will end up doing. Some of the free agents that the Steelers are going to sign from here on out, expect to see a lot of one-year deals.
Mm-hmm.
Where we spend the cap money.
You don't have to do the 2 and shift some of it into next year. You don't have to do that.
Correct. You sign guys, sign 1-year deals, let them come play on that money now, and then let that contract toll at the end of the year, and then that money is right back freed up for free agency next year. You get the cap space. So
yep. I know
so I expect to see. I would, I'm speculating that we're going to see some stuff like that as the Steelers move forward with some of their signings.
Yeah, I mean, and they've done a number of 1-year deals.
Yes, and
They have, yeah.
So,
which is not what they typically do.
So let's take that even a step further. We as fans, we love to speculate. We love to look into our crystal ball.
Sorry.
We love to look into the crystal ball and think we know what's going on here there. But not so much that I try to guess. I just like to lay out scenarios. Okay. Mm-hmm. How about a scenario where the Steelers then free up a bunch of, have a great cap number going into next year, of free space in the cap. And they go and they make a few more of those free agent splashes before they host the draft in Pittsburgh.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, couldn't you see a situation like that playing out? I could. So, not saying that's how it's going to happen, but it's like, wow, if a scenario played out like that, I'd be okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, you have to look that even from the very beginning, the very first free agent announcement of the Steelers last Monday, was Darius Slay, correct?
Yes.
He's a 1-year deal.
Yes.
Okay. The Malik Harrison, he's a 2-year. Gainwell's a 1-year deal.
Yep.
I don't know. I think Eccles might be a 1-year deal. That one hasn't really been reported through the salary cap sites that I go through, so I'm not as familiar with what's going on there. I know Loudermilk is back on a 1-year deal. Scotty Miller's back on a 1-year deal. Skoranic's back on a 2-year deal.
2-year deal.
I like that. I'm okay with that as well, because I think they're going to use him for 2 years.
Yeah.
So you're right. They don't have to structure their contracts in a way that they have to say that they're skimping this year. Now, I don't know about this DK Metcalf contract. That's a big one. I actually have a salary cap article I'm finishing up. There's a lot of the numbers that I still don't know. And that's what I was waiting for, and why I haven't done a salary cap update since last Monday. But on the website, SteelCurtainNetwork.com, make sure you're checking that out. The reason I haven't is because so many of those contracts haven't been reported to like Over the Cap or Spot Rack. Right. So I was waiting, and then I realized, you know what? There's enough of them that if I keep waiting, I'm going to be so overwhelmed. It's going to make this really, really tough. So like right now, the trade went through for DK Metcalf, but his new deal that he supposedly came to that was reported, the 5 years, $150 million, that hasn't. So right now he's counting $18 million on the salary cap. That number for this year could actually be lower, depending on how I expect it to be. I expect it to be $9 or $10 million first year. Typically, how it's done in a longer deal like that, because I mean, especially when, oh my goodness, 5 years, you're really spreading out that signing bonus. Right. I mean, think about that. Steelers don't usually. I mean, who gets 5-year deals? TJ Watt. And sometimes you get the 4-year extension or whatever, but it's players, usually players that have been on the Steelers already.
Technically, this is a 4-year extension.
But it's a 4-year, unless they're like, we're throwing up it doesn't matter because they don't have any dead money coming in. They don't have any dead money with it to start. So it's really, that's really the same kind of deal. But my point is you don't generally see that many years from a player that hasn't taken a snap for the Steelers.
Correct.
That's the thing that is like, whoa. But you're right. They could, the way they operate with various things, and I still think that there's some things that are going to get done. They need another offensive tackle. They have to have a swing tackle, something in case somebody goes down. They don't really have anything right now.
Yeah, but again, if you want to think about it, you could go out there in the free agent market. There are still guys there that you could pay on the mid to low for 1 year.
Yeah. Which is funny. I mean, think about it. The whole reason the Steelers didn't end up with Bud Dupree as part of the rotation a couple of years ago, was that last year before, whatever it was. They all run together. But he came and visited Pittsburgh. And the difference was, I think that was the year that he went to Atlanta. The difference was Pittsburgh wanted to sign him for 2 years. He only wanted to sign for 1 after being in Tennessee. So that was the one going to Atlanta.
Yeah.
He only wanted to sign for 1 year because he wanted to have the opportunity to cash in again sooner if he played really well. So he didn't want to do that 2-year deal. Now the Steelers don't have to worry about that. They're in a situation where that is. But you're ready to get into talking about some quarterback?
Let's do her.
Okay. So the reason I want to go back, I kind of want to talk about, because people have talked about, the Steelers have botched the quarterback situation ever since Ben. They haven't had a plan since Ben Roethlisberger left. Well, here we go. Here I go use the word plan again, I'm not trying to rehash my unpopular opinion article from last week, podcast from Sunday that was actually Bad's. That he brought in there. So it's not about that. It's just how have they handled the quarterback position? So if we kind of go back and look at it, if you recall, I had to look up because I couldn't remember exactly what year it was. The first time we heard some rumblings from Ben Roethlisberger that he needed to consider if he was playing the next year, actually came in January of 2017, after the 2016 season, after the last time the Steelers had won playoff games. They had gone to the AFC Championship game, kind of got it handed to them. I can't say kind of. They did. They weren't in that game. So then he mentions that. A lot of people feel like the Steelers should have been planning stuff there. The problem is, they did. But with Ben Roethlisberger playing through 2021, worrying about that in the 2017 draft, where they did take a quarterback, they took Josh Dobbs in the 4th round, not like he was going to definitely be the heir apparent. I'm sorry, they had an opportunity to draft George Kittle with that pick, and they went with Josh Dobbs. Nothing against Josh Dobbs, but we all know what kind of player George Kittle turned out to be. And then the next year, in 2018 was when they drafted. They had a very early pick. I can't remember how they got that pick. I should have looked it up, but I don't. And they traded up 2 spots ahead of Cincinnati in order to draft Mason Rudolph. And Ben Roethlisberger went on the radio show, was critical about the pick because they could have used it for something else. Do you remember?
Yeah,
do you remember what you were thinking back then?
I remember what I was thinking back then. When he said that, I was ticked. Because the reason I was ticked was, they wouldn't be in that situation, Ben, if you would just either commit one way or the other and let them know exactly what you're doing.
Yeah, and I had no problem with him saying, you know what, I'm not going to say I'm coming back until I talk with my wife. I mean, yeah. He just summed up my life. You know what I mean? Yeah. That's the courteous thing to do. But they should have known a little bit more. He kind of brought it on himself and then was criticized that the Steelers had to start to think about those things. I liked Mason Rudolph in that draft so much, I wanted the Steelers to take him in the first round. That was before I started doing this job at all. And that was, and they got him in the third round. I thought they were going to take him in the second round. They got him at the beginning of the third. So I liked the idea. And honestly, I have to admit, when Ben Roethlisberger hurt his elbow in the second game of the 2019 season, that I was kind of excited to see if Mason Rudolph was going to be the next big thing.
And then we had the helmet, and we had, and we had the getting, knocked out against the Ravens, and we had
on just a super cheap shot. Yep. So you had that. So you had someone that you thought could maybe be ready to step in. But do you think that 2019 season without Ben, do you think that's ultimately why even in 2023, people have said Mason never really got a shot? Do you think it had a lot to do with how 2019 played out?
Well, not just how 2019 played out, but then it was Ben coming back.
Yeah. Well, I'm just saying after Ben was gone in 2023, and it was the competition, it was the three-way competition between, which we'll get to eventually, more in depth, but between Pickett and Trubisky and Rudolph, and a lot of people felt that Rudolph never really got a real fair shake in that one.
Yeah.
But you also have to admit there was a lot of Steelers fans that they'd already written off Mason Rudolph. It is so. I mean, it was polarizing. There were people that after 2019, if you said good things about Mason Rudolph, you didn't know what you were talking about.
Well, that's because the Steelers didn't win the Super Bowl in 2019.
Yeah.
That's the only way people were. That's the only way. Great. It's the only way people would have been happy.
Yeah, I love the spark that Duck brought, but all you had to do was watch the games, and you saw that was not going to be a long-term answer.
I would have loved to have had a few of Duck's qualities in Mason Rudolph's body. Yeah.
If you could have meshed those players in 2019 together, that would have been really
because the only reason Duck had a shot with anything, wasn't because of he had an ability that not every quarterback has. He just didn't have the physical talents to go along with it. If he'd had the physical talents to go along with his ability to see open windows and throw guys open, you'd have really had something.
Yeah.
But he didn't have the other physical qualities to go along with that. Having that is what got him as far as it did.
Yeah. Yep.
But it wasn't enough to make him, quote, air quotes, big time,
Yeah, so honestly, and there were some people that they're like, the Steelers really should have drafted, because in that same draft they took Mason Rudolph in the third round. When they chose in the first round, they could have taken Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson was not going to fit with the Steelers, what they were doing at that. Could you imagine Lamar Jackson being drafted then and being behind Ben Roethlisberger as long as Ben wanted to keep playing?
You couldn't do it because the quarterbacks were too different.
Yeah.
You'd have had to have two different systems.
Yeah.
And teams don't do that. The team that drafted Lamar Jackson needed to be someone like, unfortunately, the Ravens.
You had to commit to the type of quarterback he was.
Correct. You had to commit to that quarterback and that style, and then you had to go find your backup that could play that at least close enough to that style that you didn't have to change systems.
Yeah.
So the Steelers had no chance there. That's why Mason made the most sense.
Yeah.
In that draft, because he was the closest style to Ben Roethlisberger in that draft.
To me, Mason Rudolph was a Ben Roethlisberger backup that if something happened where Roethlisberger was done and gone, then he was the guy that then you wanted to I hate to say it, but see what you had with him and things of that nature. But the fact that the Steelers didn't draft anything, I mean, drafting in the beginning of the third round was considered too high to take a quarterback by Ben Roethlisberger while he was still around. So a lot of national pundits are like, the Steelers didn't plan well enough for post Ben Roethlisberger.
No,
I mean,
look,
should you have been planning for post Ben Roethlisberger, or should you have been riding Ben Roethlisberger for what you could?
Okay. I don't want this to sound like I'm going to bash on Ben Roethlisberger, because I'm not, because I love Ben Roethlisberger. Ben Roethlisberger is phenomenal. But any quarterback that is on a Ben Roethlisberger level, okay, the Ben Roethlisberger, the Eli Mannings, the Peyton Mannings, the Aaron Rodgers, the Russell Wilsons, those guys were. It didn't matter where in the draft. Those quarterbacks did not want you to draft the quarterback.
Yeah.
It's I'm again, throw my air quotes up there, the air quotes level of diva that you have to deal with when you get a quarterback that good.
Yeah. And bottom line is, they don't want anybody close to their caliber really around. And people want to say, oh, well, look at the 49ers when it was Joe Montana and then Steve Young. Oh, look at the why can't I say it? The Packers, where they went from Brett Favre to Aaron Rodgers, and then Aaron Rodgers to Jordan Love. There's still a story to be written with Jordan Love. There's a difference between multiple times winning Super Bowl quarterback, one time winning Super Bowl quarterback to then the next guy. That story's not
That's
over.
Right. Yeah.
So, and you're like, why can't, name more of those? I mean, to me, I would only say Favre, Rodgers, and Montana Young. Can you name some more of those? Maybe some. None at that level.
Kurt Warner.
To what?
It went Kurt Warner to Eli Manning.
Oh, yeah, but Kurt Warner was already. He'd already
switched teams, so you
that
don't go on.
Tough, yeah.
But
so
you don't see it a lot, and the reason you don't see it a lot is because teams don't want. Teams get afraid that you potentially, if you upset that quarterback that you have by bringing that next one in, you potentially prematurely close your championship window with that quarterback.
Here you go, I'm bringing one up. Blackjack Novak said, Rivers, Herbert. Here's the problem.
They were never on the same team.
I don't think they were.
Actually, you know what you could say? Drew Brees to Rivers.
But were they on the same team for a year? Or did Brees leave right after that? That's the thing. Having them actually, because you can't say Peyton Manning to Andrew Luck because they let Peyton Manning go.
Right. Before
Andrew Luck. And even Rivers and Herbert, count up those Super Bowls. You know what I mean? Count up those AFC Championship games. That's part of what I'm saying. Okay, so I don't even know that it's true. Big Bud says Ken Stabler to Jim Plunkett. If it's not Steelers history, I'm not going to get it nearly as good. Okay, Reginald Rivers says
that's a good
Bledsoe to Brady. Yeah, but think about that.
The only reason that Brady really wasn't
Brady he wasn't a threat to Bledsoe until he actually got to play.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes, it turned out that way. But you didn't see that one coming.
Yeah.
Some of these other ones you saw coming.
Yeah. Okay. And people were saying, Brees and Rivers were on the team for 1 year.
1 year.
Then they say, Alex Smith to Mahomes. But see, even Alex Smith, that wasn't even where he started. To me, it gets really hard when you're talking about quarterbacks that switch teams. That they're on their second, they're on a different, they're not even with the same team they started with and everything. Because
I'm sorry. I that would also, sorry, Steeler Chick, that would also be putting Alex Smith on a Joe Montana level, and that's not the case.
Exactly. I mean, there's some maybe second tier ones, but I mean, really, people are saying Favre. We said Favre to Rodgers. We said Favre to Rodgers, and Montana to Young as basically the two standards.
Those are the two biggies.
Yeah. Okay. So to act like every team should be doing that every time they go from a great quarterback finishes up. Doesn't work. I mean, think about it. The reason the Colts went from Peyton Manning to Andrew Luck is because Manning missed a year. They were so bad they had the first overall pick, and they said, "You know what? Let's go with the overall consensus number one pick, and we're just going to go and start younger there at the position." So, I mean, that's some pretty big things happening. So, people that say, "Oh, well, what were they going to do? What was the plan after Ben Roethlisberger?" Well, I don't, and all the Steelers have really botched it. But the thing is, what was there to do? I'm trying to remember where it was brought up. It was in the comments it might have even been in your article, but it was comments in one of the articles on SteelCurtainNetwork.com that said, you know what? How many franchise quarterbacks are really in the NFL right now?
I don't remember if that was in there or where it was, but I was in on it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right, because you look and say, okay, who are true franchise quarterbacks right now?
Yeah.
Because somebody listed Jalen Hurts, and I said, I disagree. He is not a franchise quarterback.
I mean,
he's a really good quarterback.
It all depends on your definition of franchise. And we're going to see more about Jalen Hurts because, man, the Eagles have lost a lot this offseason.
Yes, they have, and that's why next year we'll say a lot.
So he didn't have to be everything, but because of the team around him, all he had to do was be good enough. You're going to hear me talk about that more later this week in another show. So to me, could the Steelers have done more right out of with Ben Roethlisberger moved on? Perhaps, but they were also sitting in a situation the year after Ben left, very similar to now. And someone said it. I missed it before. They said, oh, there it is. Kevin Brokenborough says Mason Rudolph was the plan. Yeah, Mason Rudolph was the plan until as soon as Ben was gone, they basically said, let's bring in someone else and let's draft somebody else.
Yeah. Mason didn't, when Ben left, Mason didn't get a chance.
Yeah. Yeah, not really. No. So they went that route. And what did they do? They signed one of, if not who was considered the top quarterback of that free agent class. And then they were able to draft whichever quarterback they wanted to out of that class. The problem was the class. Yeah. So what else were they supposed to do there? So it was kind of bad, but it wasn't really their fault. So then they were going with Trubisky and Pickett, and then Rudolph got a chance at the end of that next season, and then so much so that they stuck with him in the playoffs, which they should have based on how things were going.
Yeah.
So, and then they did a complete reset.
Well, because they stayed. Well, think about this. Because they stayed with him in the playoffs, that's part of the reason Kenny Pickett won it out.
What's that?
That's part of the reason Kenny Pickett won it out.
So you throw in the Russell Wilson thing. You've still got to remember that part of that had to be the whole, they didn't put me back in for the playoffs. Then they bring in Russell Wilson. that had to go into it. Yeah. So you found
maybe,
out Kenny Pickett wasn't your answer.
Maybe Kenny Pickett felt he was being Rudolphed.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. So the thing is, I was pretty right with what I was saying. Oh man, there was someone that I would argue with so much going into that 2022 draft. One of the at our old website, I would argue with him so much, and he'd like to say things that I said things where he made inferences that I didn't say. So I started doing the same thing back on purpose, where he said you have to draft a quarterback in the first round this year, no matter what. Well, there was one mock draft that had 5 quarterbacks go in the top 15. I'm like, well, I guess you're getting the 6th best quarterback because you have to do it no matter what. And I don't blame the Steelers for drafting a quarterback when they had their choice at 20. But what it goes to show is what I said back then. I'm like, you're like, oh, and people were still saying you should be drafting a quarterback every year now until you hit. I get the philosophy if you're trying to hit mid-rounds. The problem is when you draft a quarterback with your first overall pick, you have to commit to them. I would say for 3 seasons. Kenny Pickett quit after 2. Do you want to know the truth? Kenny Pickett actually probably helped the Steelers by asking to be traded.
Yeah, he probably
because they didn't have to hang on to him because they invested the first round draft pick to keep holding on to him to see if he was going to work out.
He gave them an out.
He gave them the out that they said, you know what? He hasn't had the upside that we wanted, so we'll take the out. So I'm going to ask you this, Rich. Do you think the Steelers did the right thing by trying to overhaul the quarterback room last year?
Well, they weren't given a whole lot of choice.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, they could have just rolled with Kenny, and apparently Mason Rudolph was ready to sign last year until the Steelers brought in other people. Maybe.
I don't know. Look, it was tough to pass on Russell Wilson for no more money than we had to give him.
See, that's what it all comes down to. This is the whole title of the good and the bad and how the Steelers have handled the quarterback position. I'm going to line out the good. This is the number one good. You know what the Steelers have done since Ben Roethlisberger? They haven't paid anybody who wasn't the guy.
Yeah.
The only one they paid was Ben Roethlisberger because he was the guy. They paid the guy. You paid the guy. What kills your franchise is paying the guy who's not the guy.
Which is why, as we saw folks get into free agency, I always worry because it's not just at the quarterback position, it's other positions too. And it's why I think you don't see the Steelers do as much on day one of free agency is because those are the guys that get overpaid.
Yeah.
Too many of those guys are overpaid, and the Steelers don't want to
we've
overpay because it sets you
over and
back.
over again. Like every year you see most of the players that are being signed early not really be worth their money. I don't want to say most, but a lot. Most might be overstepping it, but a lot.
A high percentage.
Yeah. Because if they were really that great, the teams probably wouldn't be letting them go. Think about it. T. Higgins didn't get let go. They franchised him. They weren't letting him go anywhere.
Right.
Only 2 players got franchised this past year. 2. 30 teams could have taken the best player that was walking out the door, but they felt like they would be overpaying them, so they let them go. Sometimes you got to ask yourself, and this is the other thing, what the biggest reason the Steelers aren't all often huge players in free agency is because you have to ask, why is the other team letting them go? Now, sometimes it's just a situation where they can't pay everybody. And if you can, and that's what the Steelers look for. They look for those kind of situations where, hey, we think they have a lot of value. They just couldn't get paid there, but we don't want to overpay, things like that. So there's a lot to look there. But one thing I have to say, you can say the Steelers have really messed up with not finding their next quarterback. I get that. But 1, it's not easy to find them. 2, there's not a lot of them out there that are really at the level that Steelers fans want them to be. But 3, they haven't crippled themselves by overpaying the wrong player to where they have the option next year. If Russ or Fields would have been the guy, guess what?
The Steelers would have paid him.
Steelers would have paid him.
Correct. And I think I said last week, I think the Steelers put a value on those 2 guys.
Yeah.
That they were willing to pay them.
Yeah.
Because that's what they felt they were worth. Fields got more than that. He's gone. Russ is still out there.
Which means that Russ could still come back for a quote-unquote reasonable deal for someone that expensive. And the thing is, if the Steelers end up with Aaron Rodgers or Russell Wilson this year, they will have paid more for quarterback than they had since Ben Roethlisberger left.
Yes.
I mean, it's just they will. But if Justin Fields would have taken the offer that the Steelers offered him, they would have paid significantly more at quarterback for anybody since Ben Roethlisberger. But he went somewhere else for more, which I don't blame him. So that's the thing. They're at least setting this to like, we're not going to overpay a guy that isn't the guy. That's why I liked just the whole idea of Justin Fields. If they could have got him for the amount that they wanted to pay him. That it's not something that would break you if he ends up not being the guy.
Yeah. Again, I talked last week, I call it ROI. You call it wins above replacement. It's like, right now the Steelers look at what's going on, I look at what's going on, and I sit there and think, okay, if you bring Russ back, or if you bring Aaron Rodgers in, first of all, what are you going to pay them? Okay, you need to say this about Fields, what they would have paid him. Okay, how many more wins is that guy going to get you than Mason Rudolph, who you're paying peanuts for?
Yeah. Yeah. I just realized something.
What's that?
We haven't taken a break yet. We need a break.
Have not. You better take a break.
We'll come back, and then that'll get us more into the current Steelers quarterback conversation.
Yep.
So if you're with us here live, we're not going anywhere. If you're with us on the audio, stick around. We'll be right back after this break.
Relax, don't worry, no rush, what's the hurry? Relax, don't worry, don't worry, relax, don't worry, no rush, what's the hurry? Relax, don't worry, relax.
Yeah, Rich, we need to relax. Don't worry, because the Steelers don't have a big answer going forward at quarterback, but they haven't broken the bank. And I have to say yet, because we still don't know what's going on for 2025. That's the big key. That's what I think they've done right, is that they haven't tied up a bunch of money that wouldn't be there otherwise at the position. If that's what they're going to do. And like John S. says, he's like, they're drafting one first round next year. Okay. Maybe. Okay. Bottom line is there's no QB in 2025 that is worth giving up the farm for or losing your marbles over. That's the key. I don't know that they'll draft one in 2026. By the time we get to there, all the options that you think are good right now might suck. Or there might be other names that come into that after this year that you didn't even think were going to be a possibility. That's how much it'll change by this time next year when it comes to the quarterbacks. There could be a whole lot less, but there could be even more. Or there could be the same, but it could be different ones. And Rich, I lost you. You're talking, but
sorry, I was muted.
Back.
I don't care about quarterbacks next year.
Yeah.
Because before we get to next year to even know where is it, we got to play next year first.
Yeah.
And you know what we need to be able to play for next year? We need more quarterbacks on our roster.
Yeah.
So we got to get the room figured out this year and get through this upcoming year. Then we'll worry about next year.
So to bring this to a close, Rich, the good and bad of how the Steelers have handled the quarterback position. Now let's just look at it as right now, the 2025 offseason. what have they done right? What have they done wrong? Or do you just want to say, I'm still kind of waiting to see how it works out?
Well, there is some of that. We're still waiting to see how it works out, but there are things that they've done right and wrong. Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, that you can judge it for what it is at the moment.
Yeah.
Now it could change, but at the moment, things they've done right, I'd say, is first of all, you bring back Mason Rudolph, who's a guy that knows the organization, knows the locker room, and you got him on a relatively cheap deal.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, that's the good. Okay.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think the other good is setting your numbers on some of these other guys and not overpaying.
Yeah.
Okay. And you could still technically be overpaying them, but you have a limit as a team. You know, that you've set and stick to. And that's one thing that the Steelers tend to do. They set that number. You don't see them bounce. You know, I don't think they bounce off of their number very often.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Fields could have come back and the Steelers could have potentially matched that or gotten a hold of and had him back. Nope. You got that money from the Jets? That's fine. That's great. Go be a Jet. Let us know how that works out.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and honestly, there's also, some people call it the hometown discount. To me, it's the convenience discount. For example, the report today that the Steelers offered Kyle Juszczyk, it's Kyle, right? Juszczyk,
Yes.
more money than what he got in San Francisco. But he went back to San Francisco. But you got to remember, he's got a family, he's got a residence. It's probably a lot easier to go back to where you were than it is to just uproot everything. I mean, my goodness, that's how the Steelers were able to convince Tyson Alualu to not go back to Jacksonville, because they said, look, everything's going on here. And, when your kids want to stay in Pittsburgh and things like that. So sometimes that does come into play. It can.
Yes.
But that's not the case for everybody. But you're right. The Steelers, they have a number and things of that nature. I like so far that they haven't overpaid the quarterback position. And I like that you said about the whole Mason Rudolph thing, why that's so much of the good, is because look at it, he's kind of right back into the exact same role he was with Ben Roethlisberger. He's the guy you're going to roll with if you have to. But if your other guy's good to go, then that's where you're going. I mean, that's the role he's sitting in literally right now on March 18th. That if the Steelers land someone bigger, then Rudolph he's going to roll to be your backup. And if that other person's not available, then he's the guy that's going to need to play. And that's why that was a really smart move to add someone like that. And like you said, that was familiar with everything. The more things are going on and the more I think about it, and I said it before on the preview, because like Jeff's like, why do you not want Aaron Rodgers? And I'm like, well, and I said he is he does have a bit of a headache, but no more than the Pat McAfee show, but really no more than what Ben was with his radio show. But we had Ben the whole time, we had put up with the ridiculous stuff with Ben early on in the motorcycle and stuff like that. So now you're bringing this in at the end of someone's career, and it's a little bit like that. But to me, what I don't like about it is it really does come down to the money. I don't want the Steelers paying Aaron Rodgers more than what he's really not just worth, what he would give to the Steelers. And I don't want the Steelers paying Russell Wilson more than what he's able to give to the Steelers. That's really what these contracts are. It's not really about, what you're worth. It's what are you going to give to the organization that's worth that % of our salary cap.
Yeah. Which is, to me, why I'd never go with Aaron Rodgers, because what he brings to the organization above Mason Rudolph is not worth all the extra money he's going to demand.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Because the thing is, there were some quotes that were out there from Cam Hayward's podcast. I did not listen to it, so I'm not going to say that. I just saw the quotes about some things that Cam Hayward was saying. Doesn't sound like it's like with Russell Wilson last year when everyone was all saying, hey, Russ, come in here. But they knew how much he cost last year. He cost nothing. They knew that.
Yeah.
Okay. That was a great recruiting job. But with Aaron Rodgers, Cam just says, if he wants to be here, then be here. And if he doesn't want to be here, don't be here.
Yeah.
Spot on. And if he ends up coming to Pittsburgh, what's going to determine whether I really like it or not is going to be about the money. If Russell Wilson comes back for another year with the Steelers, whether I like it or not, it's really going to be about the money. And if the Steelers roll with Mason Rudolph, I'm going to be fine with that because it really is about the money.
Because it really is about the money. Yep.
All right. Anything else you want to say about quarterback since I said my piece there at the end?
No, I'm good. I'm good.
Well, then you're up.
For 5 minutes of
non-Steelers talk. For those of you that might be with us for the first time, this is what we do in the off season. We decided to take a little break before we do our big question at the end of the show. We're doing a rotation, although last week we stopped the rotation because we took our 5 minutes to give tribute to the late Craig Wolfley. So that's what we did last week. So the rotation goes, I pick one, Rich picks one, live chat picks one. This week is Rich. So next week, live chat will be looking at it for you. Rich, what do we got?
All right. Here's what we're going with tonight. So as we said, Kyle and his cousin, Warren, our nephew, are in Myrtle Beach playing baseball currently. And
currently they're golfing.
But they've been down there for baseball. Anyway. So I've been getting into the baseball mood. Okay. So, I want to talk a little bit Pittsburgh Pirates. Okay.
Uh-oh.
I actually, Dave, would like to talk to you and get your thoughts and some of the folks in the live chat. Some underrated or forgotten Pittsburgh Pirates moments.
Okay.
Okay.
Pittsburgh. So we're sticking with sports. We're sticking with Pittsburgh.
Yes.
We're just not doing the Steelers.
Not Steelers. Going to the Pirates.
Hey, I'm fine with that. I'm good with that.
Okay.
That works out. That works out all right.
So I will kick this one off. Okay.
Okay.
Picture it. The year is 1981.
I'm not going to remember that one.
It is April of 1981. Our father, T, and my good friend, Rob Yoder, who has gone to a couple Steeler games with me in the past couple years, he took us to our first ever Pirate game. We were huge Pirate fans. So it's April, I believe it's on my birthday, or was the day after. So it's 5th or 6th of 1981. And the Pirates are playing the Cincinnati Reds. And this was in the days of still having a good portion of the Big Red Machine. You still had Pete Rose, Joe Morgan, Johnny Bench. Good team. On the mound for the Pittsburgh Pirates that day was one Rick Rhoden.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I remember him.
Who you might remember more at your age, Dave. You might remember more for his high finishes in the like pro-am golf tournaments. A very good golfer. Okay. Rick Rhoden on the mound for the Pirates. Rick Rhoden, my memory of that day of Rick Rhoden had nothing to do with his pitching performance. Had everything to do with Rick Rhoden at the plate.
Okay.
Okay. I want to say it was 6th inning, might have been 7th, 6th or 7th inning. Rick Rhoden leads off an inning. Okay. Ground rule double. The Pirates proceed to bat around In the inning, Rick Rhoden comes to the plate again with 2 runners on and hits a 3-run dinger.
You were at that game?
I was at that game.
Okay, because I've this date in Steelers this in Pittsburgh sports history. I've seen that before.
Yes. So saw him hit a ground rule double and a home run in the same inning. Pirates win as a pitcher. Pirates win 12-9.
12-9.
Just
I remember a few. I remember this game. If I do recall, we were there. Mom and Dad. It was all 5. It was all 6 of us, I do believe. But I don't think they got 6 seats together. I think they had 2 that was in a row behind, a little bit over, and then 4.
And then the 4. So it was the 4 of us kids sat together, Mom, Dad.
And if I do recall right, the Steelers.
Why do you keep
the
saying
Pirates shortstop was Johnny Ray.
No.
Or was he the second baseman?
Second baseman.
He was the second baseman. Okay, sorry. I knew he was a middle infielder, one of those things or whatever. And I remember seeing on the scoreboard that Johnny Ray had gone so many consecutive innings without an error. And then he had one. I don't even know how old I was. But I remember that. And I remember getting Italian ice.
Yep. Okay. Now I can tell you a little bit more about that game actually. Okay. So that game was against the Dodgers.
Okay.
Okay. And playing third base that year for the Dodgers was former Pirates third baseman Bill Madlock.
Okay.
Bill Madlock also had an error in that game that gave up like 2 runs.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I don't know if you remember. Some of the fans around us just giving him what for? Because remember, we were sitting down the third base line.
You were on the third base side. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And and some of the guys, just went nuts giving Madlock a hard time for the error that gave up 2. But yes, but I do remember that with Johnny Ray had been so many errorless innings and proceeds to have an error.
Yep. I will tell you this: middle school watching the Pirates in the postseason was all that was great memories. But I will tell you what: the last thing I do have to say was the last Pirates game I ever attended, and I've said this many, many times. It was in Three River Stadium. That's how long it's been since I've. Okay, you better swat away whatever's flying around you right now, Rich. For those watching,
no,
is that a wasp?
No, it's a fly. He came flying, and then you can't see the top of my microphone so much. He came in and then landed right on the top of my microphone.
It flew by. I thought it was a wasp. Oh, that's funny.
No.
So just to finish that up, I think it was the summer after 8th grade, if I recall correctly. But it was the major league debut of the late Tim Wakefield, who started with the Pirates, came up. We didn't know until later when I saw it on the TV at home that he was a knuckleballer. We just thought, man, this guy doesn't even throw very fast. And then, because we weren't old enough to, and that was pretty cool. And I haven't been to a Pirates game since. I've been to Orioles games. I've actually been on the field ahead of the games and got to say hello to Jim Leland because he was coaching the Detroit Tigers that year, and that's who they were playing. It was like the last game of the season. We were invited down because of someone who I worked with. I know we got to stop the 5 minutes that I helped.
Yeah, but see, now you got to let me finish.
Scott invited us down.
Got to let me finish my last one then. So then I was actually in PNC Park and saw the first ball that left the stadium and left the stadium and one hop, hit outside and then into the river.
Mm-hmm.
Actually was hit by Houston Astro Darrell Ward, who 2 years later was a Pittsburgh Pirate.
Ah, there you go. So he's like, hey, I like this park. I better come there. So, Yep. So there was, and I've been to Nationals Park once, but I went to that game more. Huh? I went to that
I've
game
not
more.
been
I went with friends. That was more because it was a Third Eye Blind concert afterwards too. So I'm like, oh
Nice.
yeah, I'll go to a baseball game and watch Third Eye Blind afterwards. So yeah, that was some good stuff. But yeah, since I was down and on the field, that was pretty cool. That was when Johnny Damon was the Tigers, and
Cool.
and Jim Leland. That was pretty cool. All right, Rich, what was our big question last week? Because I don't want to ask the same one.
I don't know.
because last week the title of our show was about it being a big waiting game that we were still looking at. We were looking at I don't know if someone else can remember what the big question was. So because you know what I was probably going to ask based on our topic tonight.
What?
But I think our question last week was what's going to be the next signing for the Steelers? Is that what I asked?
Yeah, or next might have been yeah, and it was position. It was by
That's
position,
right.
not
It was by position.
Yes.
Okay. So instead, I'm going to go with what someone already put out there, which is going to be, this is pretty cool. I'm sorry. Jamie Carlos says, Dave, I grew up with Tim Wakefield. We'd be on a skate ramp when he was in high school and I was in junior high. That's really cool.
That's very really cool.
That's pretty cool. So, yeah. So that's why I haven't gone to a Pirate. I'm like, I love that that's the last Pirate game just because I love being able to see that. But I'll go ahead and ask you, Rich. We'll throw it out there. We're going to remember live chat. You'll be able to answer as soon as I put it out there. Rich, 2025, week 1, game 1, Steelers offense trots out on the field. Who is going to be the quarterback under center for the Pittsburgh Steelers?
Dave, you ask an easy question.
Yeah.
It's an easy question.
Yeah. There's not a lot of options.
No. But to me, it's an easy question because right now there really is just one option right now.
Yeah.
And there's an option I'm okay with, and that would be Mason Rudolph.
Okay, so you're going with Mason Rudolph. Okay.
And I am fine if that's how it ends up. I will be. Is it the most ideal? Mm-hmm. No. But can I live with it if that's what it is? Yes.
Yeah. It's funny because Kyle says he thinks we asked this question last week. I don't think we did. Was the position one 2 weeks ago?
I don't know.
And did we ask this one?
Maybe we did because he said Malik Willis.
But I thought we were still talking about people who are going to sign, not who's actually going to win the job. So it could be right.
It might be right because I'm not sure.
That's the question is, do we want to ask it again?
I don't think we were going specifically at quarterback though. I don't think we got.
Okay. They said that
we have asked it before. Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe we have. Okay.
All right.
Okay, just end the show then.
Well, good night, everybody. I mean, it's not something. It's not something terrible to ask. So now I gotta go. It was something kind of like that in some sort of fashion. So now I'm kind of torn. Okay.
Okay.
So you were. I'm going to go in a completely different direction.
Okay.
And people, you've got to keep this short. Okay. When your response, because I'm not going to bring it up to read the whole thing. You asked the 5 minutes asking about best Pirates moments. I'm going to ask you right now. You got to give me the really quick version. In your lifetime, whether it's in person, TV, whatever, what's your best Steelers moment?
Santonio Holmes, corner of the end zone.
That's a pretty good one.
Especially because, it goes to replay, it goes to commercial, me on my nice brand new high def television, call you and say, hey, Dave, yep, I saw the replay before it went. I could see blades of grass moving. It's good.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
I'm actually going to go Willie Parker 75 yards.
Yeah.
Because I'd never seen the Steelers win a Super Bowl. Never experienced that. And at halftime, that's when I was watching my apartment, and that's when my dad said, remember, people, don't answer this yet. Don't answer yet. I'm not bringing it up
That's right.
until I put the question out there. The rules haven't changed. I'm saying that because Dad had said at halftime, man, we just need a big Willie Parker run and put this thing away. Because, man, I was still so nervous. And that coming out and happening on the second play, just like Dad had called. He doesn't usually call things like that. And he did. And I'm like, that gave me the at ease that I'm like, the Steelers have got this. The Steelers have got this. So now I'm putting it out there for people to do it. Tell me your best Steelers moment. So it's funny because Kyle Smith says, the first thing that came in after I put that out there says, just excited to share Steelers memory. Kathy Ford says, Juju standing over perfect.
Nice.
That was a pretty good moment.
Yep.
Okay. Afton Ford says Harrison Super Bowl TD. That was exciting. To me, that I didn't get caught up in that moment because so much was, was he going to score? Is he not? I knew there was a flag on the play. I knew that there was going to be more to it. Okay. David Post said the same thing, which wasn't a really exciting play, but that play took so long. It's another one.
And the sad part was there should have been a second flag on the play.
Yeah. Tom Dessenberger says the Debo TD run. I watched this. I didn't get to see a lot of Steelers games back then. I went to a Bears fan's house to watch this. Bettis flattens Urlacher in the snow.
In the snow.
That was something. This is one that was really close for me.
Yep.
Where Steeler Chick 46. Oh, sorry, I didn't give Eric Weidman. I didn't say his name. That he said Bettis flattens snow. Steeler Chick 46. Polamalu pick 6 in the AFC Championship game. Yeah, that was pretty good. Okay. Valley Ford says Ben's tackle to save the playoff win.
The immaculate tackle?
Said that their dad died 3 days earlier. What?
The immaculate tackle?
Yeah, the immaculate. The thing is, there's so many things from that game that you could say too.
I know.
Yeah, that's to me, that's my favorite non-Steelers Super Bowl game. Or non-Super Bowl Steelers game. There, I said it in the right order that time. Okay. I'm going to say this, where John Walter, this is Jaggy 15, says 2009 divisional playoff against the Chargers. Said barely touched the ball. Got his terrible towel wrapped around his head, or beer freezing in his hands at Heinz Field. It's because he was there. Yes. So a lot of these, I have special moments that I was there. I didn't say that because not everyone in our live chat. I wanted to do a live moment, but not everyone in our live chat's been able to get to a Steelers game. So, Thomas Seed says meeting Lloyd, Dawson, and Lips for lunch. That would be pretty interesting because he didn't say it had to be a game. Okay. George T says Debo's interception return for in the Super Bowl. Mr. Woodside, he says Tonio Holmes TD. Okay. Here you go. BF Bud. Lambert slamming Cliff Harris, who's a punk, in the Super Bowl.
Cliff Harris is still a punk.
Yeah. And then throwing another one. Steel Dog 88 says Joe Hayden picking off Tom Brady. I was there for that when they beat the Patriots at home that year.
Yeah, you know what else you were there for?
Well,
Jesse James caught that ball.
I wasn't there.
Weren't you? I thought you were at that one.
I was not at that one. A Blue Nose Steelhead says maybe not the best, but Polamalu jumping over the lines to sack Collins. That was pretty good.
That was pretty good.
John S. just says the entire first Super Bowl run with Big Ben. That's pretty good. Ruben Stone says the Pirates 11 game win streak.
That's good.
Very funny. And then Brett House says the Polamalu pick 6 in the AFC Championship game. Okay. Brian Brown says Darren Perry interception the fourth quarter of a Randall Cunningham pass in 94. The way it was called. It was 14-3 Steelers in Philly. They didn't win that game. Not if it was in Philly.
Yeah.
Because they haven't won there since the 60s. This is a good one. Big Pun says Randall Eldawar flea flicker Super Bowl TD pass. That's pretty special too. This is a good one too. This is a good one too. Sherry Richards, Harbaugh's incomplete pass in '95, even though we lost the Super Bowl. To go to the Super Bowl, the whole I thought he caught it, that you could read his lips. Okay. Gavin Anthony says AB's David Tyree impression touchdown catch against the Titans, thinking it was in 2017. I don't remember which one he's talking about there, but yeah. And then a lot of people are chiming in on what the other ones are. This says Big Ben off the bench to school. Oh, to school. That's right, because Ben had got hurt and came back into the game after they got the fumble back to win the game with the whole perfect Pac-Man debacle. Yes, okay. It took me a minute to realize Ben off. I was thinking, wait, Ben came off the bench. The only two games he ever came off the bench was Cleveland and Baltimore in his whole career. But he meant not that he's not that he didn't start the game. So, yeah.
Oh, by the way, want to go back. That 1994 game against the Eagles was 14-3 at home. At home.
Okay. Yeah, that was it. Okay, that makes sense. Okay. Ruben Stone said the reverse throw for the touchdown.
Yep. That was almost.
Brian Brown said that was a long time ago. Maybe it was Pittsburgh. Gavin Anthony says we blew the door off the Titans 40-17 there. If that's true, 20 that wasn't the dilly game, was it?
In what year?
They said like 2017. They played the Titans, and that was when they played the Titans. That would have been on Thursday Night Football. If that's the case, we were there.
Give me a second. I can double check that.
Yeah. Was that 20? I don't know.
I think it was, Dave.
Yeah. So, yeah, maybe it's because I'm thinking of things that I saw in all the replays of, and since we were there. So that was some. Sherry Richards said Antonio Brown against the Ravens. To me, if that's what she's talking about, I think she's talking about the Immaculate Extension, which is still one of the top moments for me as well. Okay.
And by the way, that was the Dilly game.
Yeah.
At home on that Thursday night.
Yeah. So, all right. With that, we've run way over because we did that and had to come up with something because I was worried I was asking a similar question for the last week, and I forgot to ask you before the show. So thank you, live chat, for straightening us out there. Make sure you check it out all of our podcasts this week. I think the Steel City Insider's off again this week, but we'll have something else there. Other than that, we should have our full lineup for you. Make sure you check it out, steelcurtainnetwork.com. All kinds of good stuff going on there. Rich, what do you have to say to close us out here tonight?
Another week in. Still, Steelers have question marks they need to fill. Don't worry. It'll get done. It just might be on a very different timeline than we're used to and maybe done very differently than we're used to. But you know what? It'll be okay. There will be a plan. It may not have been the most optimal plan for everybody, but it will be a plan and it will be okay. I'm just been glad to be talking football, real football kind of stuff the last week. It's been fun. Chatted with people at work about things and stuff like that. It's been kind of nice to be back into that talk. I will give a nice little piece of warning out there as Steeler fans. Please, please, please be careful about listening to especially some of the national talking heads that are out there. It's tough. I've come to find it more and more difficult to fully trust them or anything they say.
Rich, I know we're over, but I'm going to jump in on that and say something.
Okay.
This is why you're right. All you have to do is look at mock drafts. And it goes to show that the national media is not in tune with what's really going on with the Pittsburgh Steelers. No different than I'm not in tune with what's going on with the Los Angeles Rams. I'm just not. Look at the mock drafts. All they do is say, oh, well, the Steelers, they don't have another wide receiver. Most of the mock drafts have the Steelers taking a wide receiver in the first round. Now, what's the popular thing? Well, the Steelers don't know what they're doing at quarterback. They better take that in the first round. They're not going to do that where they're picking. So it just kind of goes to show that they look at big picture things and don't really know the intricacies.
Yeah. So just be careful on getting caught up in those things or hot takes. I get a couple texts probably almost every week from Thaddeus Kennedy. He'll email me or text me and be like, "Hey, what do you think the Steelers? Hey, I'm hearing this." Well, it's because he's typically out driving and hearing some talking head on the radio, and he's like, "What are your thoughts on this?" And I'm like, "I don't think anything about it. It's not going to happen." So I would just warn people a little bit about, be careful. Not saying that you don't listen to them, not saying you can't think about it, but just stop for a minute and really stop and think. And if you're really not sure, ask guys like Dave and I on any of the guys that do our shows or anybody that writes an article on Steel Curtain Network. Ask the questions there. Actually, go to Steel Curtain Network. Ask it in an article at the chat at the end. Because not only will you get feedback from whoever's written the article, you're going to get feedback from other Steeler fans too.
Yeah.
And to me, then that's a good thing. And to me, that's the fun part of this time of year is that interaction. I just wanted to throw out there to just be careful about where you're hearing information from. You have to take that into account. No matter what, though, I want to keep hearing things about the Pittsburgh Steelers because to me, that's what's fun, keeps me energized, keeps me entertained, and keeps me coming back here every week, just like I will next week. Can't wait.
Relax.
Relax.